He gave her everything, his money, his heart, his trust. But what he didn't know was that she was planning something far more permanent than a breakup. This is the shocking story of a woman who traded love for greed, and a man who took a bullet to the brain, but lived to tell the world her truth. If you're fascinated by real-life betrayals, survival stories, and courtroom showdowns, hit that subscribe button, tap the bell so you never miss a case, and drop a comment if you think justice was served in today's story. Welcome to True Crime Stories Arena, where truth is more twisted than fiction. They say money can't buy love. But in Atlanta's glittering skyline, where ambition meets illusion, that lesson often comes too late. Daniel Brooks learned it the hard way. At 41, Daniel had everything, on paper. A self-made real estate mogul, the kind whose smile gets deals signed and whose bank account turns heads. He drove a matte black Bentley, owned a midtown penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows, and graced magazine covers as one of Atlanta's top 40 visionaries under 40. But behind the tailored suits and champagne toasts, Daniel was alone. Daniel didn't want flings or gold diggers, a close friend would later say. He wanted connection. Someone to see the man, not the money. That's when Kendra Malone walked in. She was 28, a bartender at a high-end lounge in Buckhead. The kind of woman who turns silence into curiosity. Long legs, striking eyes, a voice that sounded like midnight secrets. She wasn't chasing tips. She was chasing something more. Kendra knew her clientele well. Men like Daniel, successful, seasoned, lonely. She didn't come on strong. She didn't need to. One conversation, a flicker of interest, and Daniel was hooked. They went from cocktails to candlelight dinners, then to private jets and ocean view suites in Turks and Caicos. Within weeks, his Instagram transformed. Gone were the solo shots and motivational quotes. Now, it was sunsets, his arm around Kendra, captions like, "Finally found my peace." 3 months in, Kendra moved into Daniel's penthouse. She made him feel 25 again, said one of his longtime friends. He lit up around her. But some of us wondered, was it love, or was he just addicted to how she made him feel? The transformation was subtle at first. Kendra started redecorating. Velvet drapes, a new marble bar, closets overflowing with designer handbags. Daniel's spending, once measured, became manic. Friends raised eyebrows. His sister, Andrea, tried to talk to him. "You're maxing out cards. Your savings are dropping. And we barely see you anymore." Daniel would just smile. "She loves me. She's just passionate. That's all." But behind closed doors, things were changing. Kendra didn't like him seeing Andrea alone. She said his friends didn't respect their relationship. Slowly, Daniel's world shrank, down to Kendra, and the image they projected together. At a charity gala, Daniel arrived late, alone. Kendra hadn't come. She'd had a migraine, he said. But his tuxedo was wrinkled, his smile forced. A few noticed the tremble in his hand when he reached for his drink. He didn't look like Daniel, someone whispered. He looked trapped. The man who once controlled empires was now explaining absences, covering credit overdrafts, and making excuses for the woman who'd taken over his life. Still, he defended her. "She's been through a lot," he'd say. "She just wants to feel secure." But beneath that justification was something darker, something even Daniel wouldn't admit. She didn't just want security. She wanted control. No one saw the full picture yet. Not his friends, not his family, and definitely not Daniel. But this was only the beginning. Because love, when laced with manipulation, doesn't heal. It consumes. And soon, Daniel Brooks would find out what it really costs. To fall for a fantasy. September 12th began like a scene from a romance novel. Daniel Brooks, once the Atlanta mogul, now quietly more withdrawn, had planned a surprise dinner for Kendra. Rooftop. Candles. A view of the skyline that once bore his name. But on this night, she beat him to the surprise. She cooked. She wore red. Her energy, warm, inviting, almost, too perfect. They laughed. They danced. They toasted flutes of Dom Perignon to forever. Witnesses said it looked like something out of a movie, two people madly in love. And for the first time in weeks, Daniel seemed calm. He didn't know this would be the last dinner he'd ever host. At 3:07 a.m., Daniel Brooks woke up to pain. Blinding. Sudden. Sharp. A ringing in his ears, the warmth of blood trailing down his face, and a pressure in his skull he couldn't place. He tried to move, but the darkness pulled him under again. He never saw it coming. At 3:11 a.m., a call came in to 911 from a neighbor. A woman's voice, panicked. We heard a loud bang, like a gunshot, and glass breaking. It came from the penthouse. Responders arrived 6 minutes later. The front door was closed. The penthouse, eerily quiet. Then they found him. Daniel was sprawled across the marble floor, a single bullet lodged in the left side of his skull. He was breathing, barely. Blood pooled beneath him, staining the luxury rug imported from Milan. And in the guest bathroom, they found Kendra. Wrapped in a robe. No visible injuries. Calm. Too calm. I heard the shots, she told police. I ran. I locked myself in the bathroom. We were robbed. But something didn't feel right. There was no broken window. No forced entry. No signs of a struggle in the entryway. Nothing was missing, not the watches, not the jewelry, not the cash Daniel kept in the kitchen drawer. And the gun. Registered to Daniel. Still warm. Found just a few feet from his body. Police questioned Kendra for hours. Her story stayed the same. A man broke in. Wore a ski mask. I was in the bedroom. I didn't see his face. I heard the shot, ran, and locked myself in. But the inconsistencies piled up fast. There were no fingerprints on the doorknobs. No signs anyone other than Daniel and Kendra had been inside the penthouse since the night before. And security cameras? Disabled. The hard drive, mysteriously wiped clean. The only footage recovered showed Daniel entering the building at 5:43 p.m., and Kendra just 5 minutes behind. No one else came in. Kendra's behavior, too, raised flags. She wasn't crying. She wasn't panicked. She was composed. Practiced. While paramedics fought to save Daniel's life downstairs, Kendra sat under soft lights in a patrol car, asking if someone could retrieve her purse. I have an event next week, she said. There's a dress I ordered. It should be arriving tomorrow. Detectives knew something was wrong. But without hard evidence, she was released. And as Daniel lay in a medically induced coma, unconscious, clinging to life, Kendra began rewriting the narrative. She went to the press. Tears on cue. Sorrowful tones. The heartbroken girlfriend. He was my world, she told reporters. This city took him from me. Photos surfaced of them together. Candlelit dinners. Matching Cartier bracelets. Her Instagram went dark except for one haunting post. You never know when goodbye is forever. But behind the scenes, the investigation was heating up. Police started digging. And what they found painted a far darker picture than anyone expected. Kendra wasn't just a bartender. She had a record, sealed in another state. Fraud. Identity theft. Charges dropped, but whispers remained. And more than one man came forward with eerily similar stories. Lavish dates. Sudden cohabitation. Money missing. Each time, she disappeared before consequences caught up. Now, with Daniel unconscious and unable to speak, investigators feared they were chasing a ghost who had mastered the game of trust and betrayal. 1 week later, a nurse tending to Daniel noticed something. A flicker. A finger twitch. Then, a murmur. Daniel was waking up. The bullet had shattered part of his jaw and grazed his frontal lobe, but he was alive. And in the coming days, as he regained his memory, the truth would begin to surface. But until then, Kendra Malone walked free. Smiling. Shopping. Living. As if nothing had happened. Sometimes, love isn't what blinds us. It's the fantasy. The illusion. The story we want to believe, until it turns into a nightmare. And for Daniel Brooks, the nightmare had only just begun. Most people didn't expect him to live. A bullet to the head. Blood loss. Days in a coma. For Daniel Brooks, survival alone was already a statistical miracle. But on the 7th day, after 7 hours of delicate surgery, he opened his eyes. The medical team had worked through the night. The bullet had grazed his frontal lobe, nicking bone, fracturing tissue, but, by some rare alignment of fate, it missed all critical regions tied to memory and language. The doctors called it improbable. Daniel called it something else. God spared me, he said later. But I came back for the truth. At first, Daniel couldn't speak clearly. His mouth had been damaged, and he communicated with gestures, then with a notepad. But on the 2nd day after waking, when detectives stepped into his room, he didn't hesitate. He mouthed the words with raw clarity. She shot me. Those 3 words shattered the illusion. The grieving girlfriend, the sobbing woman on the news, the one who told reporters she had lost the love of her life. A liar. And now, a suspect. Detectives stood frozen for a moment, as the weight of his statement sank in. Kendra Malone, the woman who cried for cameras, posed for candlelight tributes, and claimed she was a victim, had just been named as the shooter by the only person who could possibly know the truth. Daniel Brooks. The statement changed everything. Police revisited the scene. Reran fingerprints. Pored over the timeline. This time, with new eyes. Her story, that a masked man had entered, shot Daniel, and fled, wasn't just implausible. It was impossible. No broken glass. No tampered locks. No other DNA. And now, a motive. With Daniel's name cleared of suspicions, they uncovered something else, a quiet life insurance policy, adjusted just weeks before the shooting. Beneficiary? Kendra Malone. She would have received $2 million had Daniel died. It didn't take long for the case to accelerate. They tracked her phone. Looked for her car. Checked hotel bookings. 2 days later, they found her. She was checked in under a different name, but the desk clerk remembered her, because she tipped in cash. And she never let staff enter the room. When authorities knocked, Kendra didn't resist. She answered in a white robe, sunglasses on her head, sipping cucumber water. On the bed behind her, a suitcase, half open. Inside, $14,000 in bills, a passport, and a one-way ticket to the Bahamas. She was leaving. Not grieving. Not healing. Escaping. At the precinct, she said nothing. Not to the detectives. Not to her attorney. Not even to the press who waited outside with cameras flashing. She sat there, silent, arms folded, head tilted slightly, like someone who still thought she might win. But the walls were closing in. Meanwhile, Daniel was still recovering. His speech was slow. His thoughts sometimes scattered. But one thing never wavered, his memory of that night. He recalled the dinner. The wine. The kiss on the cheek. And then the darkness. He remembered waking briefly. The smell of gunpowder. Her voice, whispering, "Don't move." He hadn't seen the trigger pulled. But he knew. She was standing over me, he told detectives. She thought I was already dead. The prosecutors didn't need more. They had motive. They had opportunity. And now, they had a victim who survived the impossible, and was willing to testify. Kendra was charged with attempted murder, aggravated assault, and criminal possession of a weapon. Bail? Denied. And as she was led away in handcuffs, a reporter shouted the question everyone wanted answered. "Why, Kendra? Why did you do it?" She didn't respond. She never would. But some believe she never truly loved Daniel. Others say she did, but not in the way he needed. To her, he was a stepping stone. A lifestyle. A brand. A man who had everything, except the one thing that could have saved him. Discernment. Daniel Brooks lived. But he would never be the same. His gait changed. His speech slower. A scar curled above his temple like punctuation to a story that nearly ended in silence. But his resolve? Stronger than ever. He told a friend, "People think I lost everything. I didn't. I lost illusions. And I gained truth." And that truth came with a high price. Love can heal. But when it's poisoned with greed, entitlement, and control, it doesn't just hurt. It destroys. Daniel was supposed to die that night. But sometimes, survival isn't the miracle. It's the reckoning that follows. The people of Fulton County had seen high-profile trials before. But this one was different. The victim was alive. And the woman on trial? Not a gang member. Not a career criminal. She was elegant. Composed. Unblinking behind designer glasses. But beneath the gloss and silk blouse, prosecutors saw something else. A predator. On the morning of October 2nd, the courtroom was packed. Camera crews waited outside. The press called it the love trap trial. Inside, the mood was colder. The jury sat stone-faced. The judge, firm and alert. Then, the prosecution began. They painted Kendra Malone as what she had always denied being, a cold, calculated gold digger. Not a woman in love, but a woman in pursuit, of money, of lifestyle, of an escape. The motive? Simple. A $500,000 life insurance policy, one Daniel never signed consciously, but Kendra had managed to update behind closed doors, using a combination of charm, forgery, and manipulation. The evidence was damning. Her digital trail was everywhere, browser history searches for how to alter life insurance beneficiaries and gunshot wound survival odds. Text messages deleted, but recovered. Notes written. Passwords guessed. She had planned it. She just hadn't planned for Daniel to live. On the fourth day of trial, the court fell silent as the victim entered the room. Daniel Brooks. He limped to the witness stand, every step stiff with effort. A thin scar lined the side of his head like a crack in fine china. But when he sat and took the oath, there was no weakness in his voice. I saw her pull the trigger, he said, eyes locked on the jury. I saw her eyes. And I knew, there was no love there. Just calculation. The room was silent. Some jurors flinched. Others scribbled on notepads. But all were watching Kendra. She didn't blink. Daniel went on. He described the months before the shooting, how she slowly took control. Of his finances. His time. His decisions. How he ignored the signs. She told me I didn't need anyone else, he said quietly. That if I truly loved her, I'd let go of my past. And so he did. Until the night she tried to make sure he had no future. Then, it was the defense's turn. Kendra's attorneys painted a different portrait. They claimed she was the real victim. That Daniel had been controlling. Aggressive. Emotionally unstable. They claimed she had shot him in self-defense, during an argument that spiraled out of control. They presented no bruises. No police reports. No evidence. Only her word. And her word, it seemed, was no longer worth much. Not to the jury. Not after the forensic breakdown showed the bullet entered from above, while Daniel was seated. Not after the phone data proved her movements didn't match the robbery timeline. Still, Kendra remained composed. Smug, even. She wore sleek black. Took notes with a gold pen. Occasionally whispered to her lawyers. And when Daniel's testimony made the courtroom weep, she didn't flinch. Some said she was still playing the long game. Others said she was convinced she'd get away with it. But the jury wasn't buying it. They saw through the smiles. The victimhood. They saw the woman who Googled how to fake a home invasion. The woman who booked a luxury suite with blood still drying on the carpet back home. And most of all, they saw the man she tried to erase, alive, scarred, but standing. A man who refused to be her last con. The courtroom showdown was never about love. It was about power. Who had it? Who abused it? Who nearly lost everything to it? And when the lights dimmed and the attorneys gave their final words, the jurors were left with one simple question. Was it love, or was it a setup? It took the jury just over 3 hours. 3 hours to weigh the evidence, the lies, and the silence that spoke louder than testimony. When they returned, the courtroom stilled. Every breath held. Kendra Malone stood tall, back straight, face unreadable. Her defense team whispered last-minute comfort. But no amount of reassurance could soften what came next. On the charge of attempted murder in the first degree, guilty. On the charge of insurance fraud, guilty. On the charge of possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony, guilty. 3 words. Repeated. Over. And over. Guilty. On. All. Counts. Daniel Brooks didn't smile. He didn't cry. He simply closed his eyes and let the air leave his lungs, slow and quiet, as if the weight of her shadow had finally lifted. The judge wasted no time. The crimes were severe. The deception premeditated. The damage, irreversible. And so, Kendra Malone was sentenced to 40 years in state prison, with no possibility of parole. A sentence that matched the coldness with which she pulled the trigger. She didn't flinch. Not when the handcuffs clicked behind her back. Not when the judge called her actions a betrayal of intimacy and the cruel manipulation of love for profit. Not even when the courtroom doors shut behind her. Because for Kendra, it wasn't just about what she did. It was about who she thought she could get away with being. But this time, she didn't. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed like lightning. News vans formed a barricade. And then, through the noise, stepped a man the world thought might never walk again. Daniel Brooks. His suit was sharp. His gait, slow. But his presence? Unmistakable. Reporters leaned in. Microphones surged forward. But Daniel didn't speak with bitterness. He spoke with purpose. I lost half my brain, he said, but not my heart. He paused, letting the silence work in his favor. I was targeted. Lied to. Nearly killed by someone I loved. But I refused to become the victim in my own story. I choose to rebuild. And rebuild, he did. In the months that followed, Daniel launched something unexpected, the Brooks Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to supporting male survivors of domestic violence. Because his story wasn't just about betrayal. It was about how society often overlooks the silent sufferers, men who are told to toughen up, stay quiet, and handle it. Daniel's case shattered that narrative. His foundation quickly gained national traction. Hotlines were created. Counseling services launched. Safe housing opened in cities that had never seen male-focused domestic violence support before. He spoke at conferences. Schools. Prisons. His message was clear. Abuse has no gender. And survival has no shame. But Daniel's recovery wasn't only public. Behind the scenes, he battled short-term memory lapses, speech therapy, and physical exhaustion. The bullet had grazed his frontal lobe, miraculously sparing critical brain functions, but leaving emotional landmines that took time to defuse. Still, he showed up. To therapy. To advocacy. To life. And he did it all with the same determination he once brought to boardroom deals, now focused on something far more important. Healing. As for Kendra Malone, prison changed her surroundings, not her story. She remained silent in interviews. Declined visitors. Filed no appeals. Some say she still believes she did nothing wrong. Others say she finally met someone she couldn't charm, a 6x8 cell and steel bars. But the truth? It doesn't need her to agree with it. Because truth, once spoken, doesn't beg for validation. It stands on its own. Daniel Brooks is not a perfect man. But in surviving what should have been his end, he became something greater. A voice. A warning. A beacon for others walking blindly into love without seeing the trap beneath. Because sometimes, the person holding your hand is the same one tightening the noose. And sometimes, surviving isn't just about living. It's about living loud enough that no one else has to go through it alone. Daniel learned that love can blind us, but the truth always surfaces. Kendra wore designer heels, but beneath them walked betrayal, greed, and cold-blooded ambition. He trusted her with his heart, and she put a bullet through it. Would you have seen through her lies? Could you have survived her love? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us next time on True Crime Stories Arena, where every lie leaves a trail, and every story has its reckoning.